Good evening, everyone. My name is Neil Menage. I am a member of the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee, or the ESAC. After reviewing all of the input from our community, the ESAC committee members were unanimous in the need to raise awareness about our environment and climate change. We're proud to partner with the Nuclear Innovation Institute and Project Neutral to bring you tonight's program. We hope this will help us make a difference one person at a time. A quick technical note about the platform that we are using for this evening's event. The Zoom webinar platform allows you to make use of both the Q&A, questions and answers, and chat functions. We invite and encourage the audience to submit questions about climate change, the carbon calculator, and related topics for the presenters and the panelists via the Q&A function. Questions that are not addressed during the event will be responded to in written format following the event. The chat function may be used to communicate with all attendees. While we invite you to make use of this function, we do remind you to be courteous and respectful of others in this forum. Harassment or inappropriate language of any kind will not be tolerated and will result in your removal from this event. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the Town of Saugeen Shores website. We are delighted to have several guest panelists participating tonight. Allow me to introduce them. Dela Avler, President of the Saugeen Shores Rail Trail Association. Bill Bowden, President of the Southampton Residents Association. Luke Charbonneau, our Mayor of Saugeen Shores. Janice Jackson, the Warden of Bruce County. Ben Lobb, our Member of Parliament for Huron-Bruce. Michael Renchek, President and CEO of Bruce Power. Jamie Smith, our Saugeen Shores Councillor, and Taylor White, an ESAC member. Welcome, and thank you for being with us tonight. And now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Cheryl Grace, Councillor for Saugeen Shores and Chair of the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. First, a little background on our committee. In April 2021, Council appointed the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. On our screen, you can see the members of the committee. Our charge was to assess the town's existing environmental sustainability policies and make recommendations for improvements, as well as new initiatives. As part of our work, the committee heard from experts, studied numerous resources and the work of other municipalities, and heard from 535 members of our community through our public survey, which ran from mid-August to mid-September. We are most grateful to Professor Robert McLeman and his students from Wilfrid Laurier University, who helped us to design and analyze the survey. Our Environmental Stewardship Committee grows out of our 2017 Corporate Strategic Plan, which was updated in 2020. Through this plan's guiding principles, Council stated, "We are a municipality that is conscious of our natural assets and resources in our care, and we are responsible stewards and trustees in their protection." This is not the town's first environmental committee. In 2009, a previous committee presented 11 key recommendations to Council to promote environmental sustainability. Many of their recommendations were adopted and are still in place. For example, the environmental calendar, the annual town tree sale, installation of bike racks, and offering blue boxes, composters, and green cones for sale at cost. In addition to these recommendations, the municipality has continued to add policies and programs which promote environmental sustainability. Examples are the Waterfront Master Plan and Annual Beach Maintenance Plan, energy management audit policies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, as well as updates to the official plan and sections of the drainage, water and wastewater, waste management, and transportation master plans. The recommendations we will present to Council in our final report encompass 4 broad categories: climate change, protection of natural resources, increased public awareness, and waste reduction and diversion. The work of this committee, although extensive, is far from all-encompassing. It offers an introduction and insight into a range of local environmental and climate change initiatives where we can both learn and take action. Now, why we're here tonight. Our survey told us that at least 57% of our respondents are concerned about climate change. And as we conducted our work, our committee agreed that creating recommendations to address climate change would be one of our priorities. I know from talking to friends and residents and from my own family, people want to know, how can my family and I help to combat climate change in a reasonable way? There's so much going on right now that's overwhelming. We know that. But our goal for tonight is to provide some ways for you to make some changes, one step at a time. We want to raise awareness of how individuals can make a difference. And we think Project Neutral's carbon calculator is a great way to do that. Thanks for being with us tonight as we work together on making a difference one person at a time.
Thank you, Cheryl. And now let me introduce Chad Richards, Director at the Center for New Nuclear and Net Zero Partnerships.
That's great. Thank you, Neil. And I'm really excited to be here this evening with and thank you to the Saugeen Shores Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee for putting this event together. It's really been a great event to work on with this group, and the NII is happy to support in any way that we can. Before we get into the carbon calculator itself, I wanted to provide the audience with a bit of a brief introduction to the Nuclear Innovation Institute, or the NII as we're more commonly known. Just a little bit about who we are and what we do. The NII is an independent, not-for-profit organization based right here in Port Elgin. We're committed to accelerating the pace of innovation in the nuclear sector, and we work to demonstrate the critical role that nuclear will play in achieving a decarbonized future. Now, as you'll see on the screen, we have an absolutely outstanding space right here in Saugeen Shores in Port Elgin. And COVID-19 has presented a challenge for us to make full use of our space, but we're really looking forward to hosting events and discussions in person at our state-of-the-art facility when it's safe to do so. And our facility really does provide the perfect platform for community conversations, much like the one we're having, albeit virtually this evening. Next slide, please. So the theme of tonight hits on a really important topic of carbon literacy, and really providing members of our community with the tools and information that we need to really make a difference as individuals and as consumers. It's not dissimilar to the work of NII's newly announced Center for New Nuclear and Net Zero Partnerships. Through the work of the center, we're looking to build decarbonization opportunities right here in Bruce Grey and Huron counties, while also conducting original research and thought leadership on the fundamental role that nuclear power plays in achieving the all-important net zero future that we've heard so much about in these past few years. Next slide, please. And fundamentally, nuclear really does play a central role in driving decarbonization, a role that has a positive impact on our own carbon footprints, which we'll measure momentarily. We may not think about it every time we turn on our lights or charge our phones, but every time we do that, we're using electricity that must be generated somewhere. And nuclear provides us with a carbon-free way of producing that energy that's so vital to our day-to-day lives. As you'll see on the screen, the use of nuclear in Ontario, and specifically something that our region should be proud of right here at Bruce Power, the use of nuclear in Ontario had a direct correlation with the decline of coal, which is a very heavy carbon-intensive way of producing electricity. So what this means in practice is that Ontarians can rest assured that their homes and businesses are powered largely by clean, carbon-free electricity, thanks to the significant contribution that nuclear power plays to our grid here in Ontario. And with that, that's our brief introduction to the NII. So Neil, I'll turn it back over to you to keep things rolling this evening.
Thank you, Chad. Now let me introduce Odette Bardnicki, a member of the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee and an active member of the Grey Bruce Climate Action Network.
Good evening. I know I'm preaching to the choir tonight. You wouldn't have registered if you didn't have an interest in climate change. Make no mistake, there is no debate. 98% of all global scientists agree climate change is real and it is bad. This simple diagram shows that greenhouse gases, mostly from the burning of fossil fuels, trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere. This causes global warming. We look outside on a cold January night like this and think, so what's so bad about a little warming? Climate change isn't just happening in other countries. Canadians experience devastating impacts of climate change from coast to coast to coast in 2021. Severe and costly weather events included forest fires, like the one that wiped out Lytton, BC, a heat dome that took almost 800 lives in just a few days, droughts that decimated agriculture and killed thousands of livestock. Atmospheric rivers, that's a new word on the scene this year, that crumbled mountains and destroyed entire transportation corridors. Science hasn't confirmed that tornadoes are caused by climate change yet, but there is agreement that tornadoes, like the one in Barrie shown here, are more frequent and more severe. No, we in Canada are not immune. Our region can expect more frequent and more extreme weather events due to climate change too. These photos were all taken locally in 2021. They include evidence of the September 7th extreme weather event that uprooted 175 mature trees on public property and dozens more on private properties. That storm also damaged our harbor and many private homes. Uninsured costs are in the hundreds of thousands. The Intact Center at the University of Waterloo warns that few insurance companies will continue to insure against climate change related damage. The costs of climate change extend beyond increased frequency and severity of weather events and include intense heat, drought and insect outbreaks, rapid loss of biodiversity, increased healthcare needs, economic and transportation disruption, water scarcity, growing food insecurity, and yes, even threats to international peace and stability. Canada is warming at twice the rate of most countries, 3 times as fast in our north. Melting permafrost releases deadly methane and raises seawater levels, wreaking havoc on all of our coasts. Canada is among the top 10 carbon emitting countries in the world, not something to be proud of. But individuals can play a significant role too. The average Canadian is responsible for about 14.2 tons of carbon annually, more than 3 times the global average of 4.8 tons per person. But we can impact this because science has proven that climate change is anthropogenic, which simply means caused by humans. 45 to 60% is a very large number. But anthropogenic is good news. It means that if humans make it, we can unmake it, or at least a good part of it. We can manage our carbon footprints, but you can't manage what you don't measure. So tonight, with the help of our guest speaker from Project Neutral, Anna Gordon, we're inviting you to measure your own carbon footprint. Your scores are confidential, and the choices you make are too. If each of us can reduce our footprint, we can make a difference, one person at a time.
Thank you, Odette. Well, tonight, yes, we do have an expert to help us measure our personal carbon footprints. Anna Gordon is the engagement coordinator for Project Neutral. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you this evening. I'm really excited to be here. And let me just see, I want to make sure. Oh, I need to be allowed to share my screen. Let me just see. Aha, I've got the power now. We'll be there in just a second, everyone. There we go. And like magic, Project Neutral, here we go. All right, so Project Neutral, before I take you to the calculator, just going to give you a little background about first who we are. We're a small and I like to say exciting climate action charity and a project on Makeway's shared platform. We're an innovative organization that has created and launched programs such as Kids Cutting Carbon, which is for schools, Talk Climate to Me, which is an online climate action education experience for women, and the Green from Home Challenge, which provides specific resources for workplaces and businesses. And finally, we are the creators of an award-winning carbon calculator that gives people the tools they need to understand their climate impact and also understand what they can then do about it. So, why measure impact? Well, for many, measuring their climate impact is going to be their first step towards climate action. And that's all we need is for people to get involved by taking that first step, and then they can take another. Next, what gets measured matters. We tend to pay attention to the things we give attention to. And I know that sounds like a bit of a mouthful, so I always like to say, think of fitness. When someone's thinking about taking a health and fitness journey, maybe that first step is stepping onto the scale, making an appointment to visit their doctor, just finding out where they are right now so they can figure out how far they have to go and maybe what that very first step on the journey may be. And finally, we like to measure impact because we believe it gives power back to the individual. We may not be able to influence all the areas of our lives, but we can certainly discover where we can create positive and powerful action. And finally, the carbon calculator. I believe you'll actually find this link in the chat, which may make it a little easier for you to follow along with me. So if you want, you can click there, or you can open a browser and go to www.projectneutral.org. And I'm going to head over there myself. And you'll know you're in the right spot if you see this lovely smiling face and a pink Get Started button. So now, while I can't see everyone, I can see a few people in my window here. So buddies, help me out. Are we there? Can you give me a thumbs up? Yes? Wonderful. Okay, so we're going to get started. All right, very easy. We're going to create a new account. So first name, last name, email, password, it needs to be 8 characters. And while you're filling that out, I'm going to make a pitch for, and this is completely unbiased, for the fabulous Project Neutral newsletter. If you'd like, I would recommend that you click yes and you subscribe. It's a great newsletter, great way to keep in touch with what we're doing. And you only get once a month, so you're not going to get spammed with a bunch of stuff. But again, completely unbiased. And since I already have my copy for this time through the calculator, I'm just going to say no. And I'm going to click create account. All right, so before we start, we should all see that welcome to Project Neutral button. Thumbs up, final one. I'm seeing some thumbs up. This is good. Okay, so as it says, we'll ask you a few questions to build a snapshot of your carbon footprint. You'll see how your impact compares to other households and find ways to make a positive difference. It should take about 3 minutes, and well, for this evening, it may take just a few more because you have to hear me chattering in the background and giving you some feedback here, but it's a very quick process, and really the core is about seven questions. So here we go. Let's click next. All right, so first of all, your city. Well, I'm going to select Toronto. Just pop in postal code. Pretty easy peasy there. Oh, sorry about that. And we're going to go next. Okay, household. Well, in my household, I don't have any tiny children anymore. So there's myself, my husband, and my teenagers. So I'm going to put 3. How many children? That would be 0. And next. All right, and now you're home. So I live in a detached house. How many bedrooms? Say 4. Now I live in a single level home, but because it's including our basement, I'm going to put that it has 2 stories. Do you own or rent? Own. And our house is over that 30-year mark, so we're going to say between 30 and 80 years old for the age of our home. And then we'll click next. Okay, transportation. Well, I'd say it's a bit of a mix, so I'm going to say walking, public transit, and driving. So you can see we have this nice pat on the back for some of the things that we're doing positively, which is wonderful. What kind of vehicle do we usually drive? Well, compact car. How many minutes do you drive on an average weekday? So my husband and I commuting, let's say 30 minutes a day together. And how many minutes on the weekend? Well, as I said, there's 2 adults and a teenager. Let's say 3 hours, so I'll say 180 minutes. And how is it powered? Well, I'd like to say it's an electric, but it's a gasoline powered car. And we'll click next. All right, air travel. So we actually didn't have any air travel this year, but I know that's not the case for other families. So I'm going to select yes, so you can see what this looks like. And here it's asking, in total, how many round trip flights did people in your household take? So since there's 3 people in my home, if the 3 of us took a trip together, that would be 3 round trip flights. And how would you describe yourself? Well, we have a bunch of, shall we say, different eaters in my household. So to represent everyone, I'm going to say the average omnivore. How often do you throw out leftovers or spoiled food? I would like to say never, but that's not truthful. So I'm going to be honest because I want a real score to see where I'm at. And I'm going to select sometimes. And do you compost? For this survey, I'm going to say no. And you'll see right here, I like to point this out. At Project Neutral, we have very much a belief in no shame, no blame. We just want people to have an awareness, take one small step, take another small step. So that's all we're focused on here. And as you can see here, we haven't shamed anyone for not composting. We're just curious, why don't they? And that gives us the opportunity then to maybe provide more information, resources, see different things that maybe we need to pay attention to. So to answer this question, I know that friends of mine have said, oh, it's kind of smelly, or I'm afraid of having critters in my backyard. So that's why I'm going to select this one here. And we're almost there. Finally, food waste. Do you use a garbage bin or bags? Well, I use a bin. How big is the bin? I'll say medium. How often is pickup? Weekly. And does your household recycle? Yes. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we're almost there. We're almost at the score. If you'd like, just so we can tell everyone how you arrived at the calculator. Let's give a shout out to the wonderful people that gathered us here tonight. So I'm going to say that learned about this at an event. And I'm going to say, I have it listed here for myself as the Saugeen Shores presentation. So I'll say that. And then I feel like there should be a drum roll here almost. We're going to calculate those results. All right. Okay, so as you can see, there's 3 different scores here. In the middle, this green score, this is mine. The average household score is 19.1. And I just want to say, when we're doing this score, we're comparing to other people with the same size household. Okay, so if your household had a different makeup, these numbers may look different. And also I should mention that the number you're looking at is based on CO2e, which is a carbon dioxide equivalent. And we use that to represent all of the different greenhouse gases, which just really makes it a lot simpler rather than breaking it down into lots of different numbers. So when you're looking at this, it's 19.1 tons of CO2e per year. So average, the green is mine, and then the blue is the 9.7 is the top 30% of similar users. So I mean, that's a fabulous score, but for myself looking at this, that may look a little overwhelming. So I might look and say, okay, I'm here. What can I do to maybe get closer to this average? What would be some steps that I could do? So to help me figure that out, I would scroll down here and you can see we've broken down my score into the different categories: home energy, transportation, travel, food, and waste. So right away, my eye is drawn to food. I can see quite noticeably, quite visibly, that I've got some room for improvement there, and I could probably make a difference there. So I may want to go a little further, and I'll just show you here. We've only completed 1 survey, so there's surveys for all the different areas. So I might want to dig a little deeper into that food category, complete that survey, and in doing so, it may alter this number. I may find that this number is better. I may find that it's not changed or it's worse, but at least I'll get a more accurate picture, pardon me. Okay, so again, food, let's scroll down just a little bit further. So I dive in here, I decide I want to make some changes. Down here, these take action areas. In each category, we've given suggestions that people can use to take those first steps. So I'll use food emissions as that example. So I'll use this first one here. You know, I may look at this one and think, okay, I might want to pledge to increase my plant-based meals each week, but how is this going to help? So if I click here, I can look for some more information. Oh, let's try that again. There we go. And it'll give me some information as to why this is important and how it will impact, as well as provide me with some resources to help me get started. And so if I decide, yeah, I'm gonna move on this one, I want to move forward, I can take this action, click the button at the bottom, and it will take me right into, this is the area we were at, the household impact, and now I'm in my action journal. And so now it's housed this in my action journal, so I know I can come back, continue to update this area and monitor my progress. Now, in the interest of time, I know we've got a lot of other wonderful things to get to this evening. I'm going to stop right there, but I'm just going to go back to my main screen and say before I sign off that because, oh, sorry about that. Because we are a charity, we do rely on the support of a lot of wonderful people to keep things going, to make sure that we get to do the wonderful things that we get to do. So these are some of the fine folks that have been helping us with that. And certainly all of this information is housed on our website. And finally, this is me. If you want to visit the website on your own, or you want to reach out to me, connect, look for some ideas, some resources, by all means, feel free. If you have a phone close by, you're certainly welcome to take a snapshot, and that way you have my information for future reference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you to Project Neutral for hosting their carbon calculator tonight. Over to you, Chad.
That's great. Thanks, Neil. I'm just going to wait until the gallery view shows up here and get a conversation going with our panelists that we've assembled here this evening. I think that we have quite a great group of local celebrities to present some of their views on the carbon calculator exercise and really their carbon footprints individually, and some of the things that some of the differences that they can make in their lives as well. But first, before I get to some of our panelists, I wanted to kind of set the tone with some insights that I came up with as I completed Project Neutral's carbon calculator on my own, and some of the things that I've done in my life. So I used to live with my folks over in Chesley and was commuting to Port Elgin every day to get to work. And thankfully, my fiance and I were able to enter the housing market and bought a place right near Port Elgin. So now I walk to work, so cutting some of my carbon footprint. That way, I'm actually only a few short steps away from the NII here. So sometimes it feels like I actually can't really separate work and home. But it really, I drive a GMC pickup truck, as I'm sure many people in the region drive pickup trucks. So in the vein of no shame, no blame, I think that it's okay to drive those types of vehicles, and it's really just about making small differences that you can to lower your footprint where it's feasible, but understanding we live in a kind of unique region that way, where we're in a pretty vast rural area. So that's just kind of some of my own experience and some of my own insights from completing the carbon calculator. But now to get to some of our panelists. So Mike Renchek, let's start with you first. I just wanted to kind of at a high level in this age of electrification and electrify everything, just wanted to kind of ask you what struck you most about the carbon calculator exercise and the event this evening.
Yeah, it's a fewfold. We talk about electricity a lot as part of NII and as part of Bruce Power. And quite frankly, Ontario's electric grid is deeply decarbonized. So you can use electricity anywhere in Ontario and feel really good about that. So when I was going through the calculator and looking at it, electrifying our homes and continuing down that path of electrification really does help clean up. Now, for myself, I'm like you. I drive back and forth to Bruce Power every day, and I was staggered by just how much of a component driving comes in to it every day. And I know a few years ago I placed an order for an EV, and I'm waiting for it to be built because I am going to get a pickup truck. Particularly for the big winter and the big snow. So, I think as my time comes with that, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that, and I'll really change my profile. But it's amazing the transportation sector is likely the largest component of carbon emissions now in Ontario, far beyond the electric sector. So anytime you use electricity in Ontario, you should feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, that's great, Mike. So you kind of led into my next question for you, which was in this age of electrification. Are there any aspects of your own life that you've given thought to? So clearly, with the purchase of an electric vehicle or an electric vehicle on the way, that's one aspect you're thinking. Are there any other kind of elements of your life that you're taking a look at, or that you kind of maybe took note of through the carbon calculator exercise?
Yeah, it gets back to travel, even air travel. Like, it's just staggering how much transportation adds to a person's carbon footprint year in and year out. It's probably the largest single component that we have, beyond heating and cooling of the house. So, energy conservation in your home by turning down temperatures, turning off lights, helps conserve. And then composting as well can be something simple that you do. Carol and I do that. More Carol than me, right? She's out feeding the animals all the time. So she views it as a double benefit. But the composting process sometimes really is, it's a difference that you can make, and it's simple to do. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to do it.
Oh, that's outstanding. Thanks, Mike. Now, Warden Jackson, moving on to you. We live in like I mentioned, in a vastly rural region, and you yourself living in a place like South Bruce Peninsula. So, some of the amenities that, some folks in bigger centers take for granted, like public transit, to make a reduction in their footprints, are really their next thing to unavailable in this region. I'm just wondering if you can provide some insights on that front, and then, anything that you gleaned from the exercise this evening.
Thanks, Chad, and thanks for inviting me tonight. I'm happy to be here. there are challenges for people that live in rural areas. It's a tongue twister. Transportation, as Mike was saying, like transportation really is the largest, because we don't have the ability to walk everywhere that we would like to walk. And of course, there's no public transit in most areas here. So we can ride share. So I mean, that really is one of the biggest ones. Home heating, again, like Mike touched on all of these things, and of course the smallest carbon emissions come from natural gas, and yet so much of our region doesn't have natural gas. We still have a lot of people that are heating their homes with oil, and so that's a challenge, trying to get natural gas into all of our municipalities, and you know, handling your waste and doing the green bin composting. And I know we've discussed this at the county, we've discussed it, you know, in South Bruce Peninsula, and to retrofit our garbage trucks to handle the green composting is extremely expensive. I was shocked at the cost, actually, to retrofit all of these vehicles and then supply every single home with a green bin. And so I know Saugeen Shores and South Bruce Peninsula both have the green cone digesters, which we do sell at cost, just to get that out there and encourage people to do composting in their backyards. And I'm not sure, Mayor Charbonneau, about your particular composter, but ours is below grade. Like, you dig a hole in it, and it's just got the cap on the surface, and that's for animals, you know, bear proofing and things of that nature. So those are the challenges really that we have regionally in rural areas in Ontario.
That's great. And as a moderator, it's always easy when a panelist cues another panelist. So maybe Luke, Mayor Charbonneau, did you want to jump in and kind of respond to some of Warden Jackson's comments there?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I want to start by saying thanks to our Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Committee. I mean, clearly we have an awesome committee. Just this event is great. And so just thanks to them for putting this together. And yeah, everything that Mike and Janice have said is true. You know, we live in a rural place, and I was shocked. I did my own, and I went through, I did the whole calculator. I did the whole thing and went deep into my life and looked at some of the things that I should be doing better. And one of the things, the thing that really jumped out is just what Mike and Janice have said, transportation. It's shocking. You know, I'm a farmer. I have a pickup truck. I have 3 boys. I have a minivan, and we drive them a fair bit because we need to. And it's a huge impact. And, you know, it's interesting. I have spent a lot of time focused on the energy usage in my house over time. And that shows up here. I was gratified to see it show up because it's quite low, but not focusing as much maybe on transportation, but it's hard to solve for all the reasons that Janice and Mike have said. You know, we just have it's snowing outside right now, and my pickup was sure nice to get me here, and I felt a lot safer than I would have in a compact car, or certainly I couldn't have bicycled here tonight. So so these are challenges we face, but it's interesting. I'm just reading the comments coming through here, and people talking about offsetting, you know, the opportunity to, you know, it's about being carbon neutral rather than carbon zero. And so maybe there's ways that folks like us in rural communities, individuals can take steps to offset some of the ways we're using carbon to try to be more carbon neutral. I like to think, I'm a fruit and vegetable farmer, so I like to think that I sequester some carbon in my day-to-day life, and maybe I'm helping to offset the pickup I need to do that job, and the tractors that I run, and all the carbon I'm emitting to do that work. And I have to emit that carbon to do that work. But I like to think maybe we're making up for some of it by the work we're doing growing fruits and vegetables for people locally, so they don't have to, maybe they can get it local instead of having it shipped in from farther afield. So we're all, it's a cool exercise, and I'm glad you folks have exposed me to it, because it gives me a chance to make those assessments and think about things that I can do in my own life, and then also to think more broadly about things we can do in the community to make those things easier for people in their own lives. So
yeah. Absolutely, and you brought up a really great point about the agriculture sector and the absolutely pivotal role that the agriculture sector will play in a clean energy sector, a clean economy. I mean, the fact of the matter is we're going to need to eat. That's not going away anytime. That's just a fact of life. So finding new ways to not only grow the food that we eat and rely on, but to do so in a way that, as you mentioned, sequesters more carbon, provides potentially more benefit to farmers through markets and whatnot as well too, as we look at carbon offset markets coming on board here in Canada, and finding new avenues for revenue for the farm sector as well is a really fascinating conversation. So maybe that's a good segue into bringing in MP Lobb. Ben, great to have you here this evening. And I know that the life of an MP is a wild one. I know that it's fast paced, it's full of a lot of travel, and I just wanted to see if there was any kind of insights from you this evening on kind of working through the carbon calculator, and any insights from you on your life from doing this exercise.
Thanks very much, Chad. It is a pleasure to be here tonight. With COVID times, obviously, it has changed completely. I think how I would operate during a calendar year. I'm sure the same with Janice and Luke, because in a year prior to 2020, I would attend probably 300 events in a year, from Grand Bend, Exeter, all the way to Southampton, across to Walkerton. And last year it was maybe 25. And I think I saw Janice at 3 or 4 of them. So it's that has changed tremendously. So I would say that would be the first thing. The other thing I had thought about was innovation. And I look at, there's a company called, I made a note here, I met with this individual a while ago, North Star Clean Technology. And what they do is they actually recycle asphalt shingles. And then they repurpose the oil that they glean out of the asphalt shingles. That's an amazing technology, and it needs to be regional, but it's a shame to have to put an asphalt shingle in the landfill, which we do because they do wear out. And when we redid our place a few years ago, I put a steel roof on, and I just didn't want to have to deal with an asphalt shingle roof down the road, and steel seemed to be a great long-term investment. And as it turned out, it was great. The other thing I just wanted to mention while I was thinking on home construction, I can remember as a kid sleeping in my bedroom, and my head was near the window, and a winter's night like tonight, there was a cold draft coming through. Nowadays, with new home construction and the building code today, you don't have that. Now you have to have a air exchanger in your house so you don't get condensation. That's because your home is so well insulated. So we've come a long ways with different innovations, and we need to continue to move on that. I've got another 10 things on the list. The other thing I just wanted to say was water. We live on the shore of Lake Huron, and many of us, myself included, from time to take water for granted. If you look at what's happening in China, a complete disrespect for water. And they're going to have not only, we already have huge environmental issues, but now they're having huge economic issues because they don't have enough hydroelectricity to provide energy to the rest of their country. So water is a big one we can all take a look at.
Oh, that's outstanding, Ben. And I think that, you brought up a good point of like onshoring innovation and really driving made in Canada innovations and made in Ontario solutions to our collective energy problems. It's really a great insight, and appreciate you bringing it forward. And I find it really interesting. I think that the topic of pickup trucks has come up a couple of times throughout the meeting here. And I drive one, and I know Mayor Charbonneau, you mentioned you drive one as well. And I find it really interesting. We live in what some people affectionately call F-150 country. And Ford has recently started rolling out their F-150 Lightning, so an electric model of the F-150. You see the Chevrolet launching an electrified Silverado. Pro. So you see these iconic brands switching to an electrified business model. And so I think it really speaks to really the consumer demand for this type of product. And so Councillor Smith, I wanted to bring you in here because you and I had an interesting conversation about the carbon calculator and a recent change that you made in your life and how it impacted your score. I wondered if you could share that story with the audience.
Absolutely. And first and foremost, thanks so much for having me. When my dear friend and colleague Cheryl Grace invited me to be part of this panel this evening, if I'm being honest, I glanced at her email and assumed that she had invited me to observe her sharing her experiences as a panelist. And it wasn't until I looked a little closer after having agreed to this that I realized she wanted me to share my experiences. And it begged a lot of questions for me because I don't consider myself as well versed as many of the other panelists here today, but I was hoping I could share a very honest tale of my experience and Chad, as you've mentioned, some changes that I've made. So to make a long story somewhat short, I'll say that I'm what many consider an elder millennial. And so I was raised in Bruce County, where my family, although great people, talked more about Bruce County beef than we did about green enhancements. And I grew up in the 90s where modern conveniences and disposable sort of everything was coming into fruition. So in preparing for tonight's events, I was one of those people who watched An Inconvenient Truth for the first time. This was not the carbon literacy that you speak of, was not something that was in my everyday lexicon. And therefore, when I did the carbon calculator, I was a little bit nervous. The first score that I obtained was marginally higher than average for, as Anna described, a family of my size. And I was pleasantly surprised with that, although noting that much like MP Ben Lobb has described, a lot of my habits have changed over the last couple of years. So I decided that I would redo the score calculation with one change in mind, and that much like Mike Renchek, I too purchased an electric vehicle in October of 2021, and I'm still waiting for it to arrive. It's said to be here in about June of this year. So a little plug, no pun intended, for anyone who intends to look into the electric vehicle. It might be worth looking sooner rather than later. But my score dropped drastically. It went from about 1.5% over the average to 10 points below. And I changed not one other factor in my calculation. So I think that it's important to know, as I've thought about, what I can bring to this conversation, having not been an expert and not having an electric vehicle yet to even share that experience, I'm compelled to offer you that I don't have any great tips on composting or remembering your grocery bags when you go to the grocery store, but I can offer you that many of you here tonight, as Odette mentioned, are likely people who are very concerned with the environment and people that can make change by having conversations with people in your life who are very average or slightly above average like me. And the compelling argument that I've thought of often as I'm thinking of you, the participants, is over the last 24 months, we've been asked to wear a mask, and I've diligently donned my mask, and sometimes two, for the purpose of noting that my small inconvenience could help save the public health or perhaps individuals' lives. And I think all that we're asking is for small inconveniences in your life to make big changes to those around you.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Appreciate that. That's really, really, really insightful, and it fits exactly the theme of this evening, which is making a difference one person at a time. And that's exactly what we're doing, trying to raise the carbon literacy of the community and understanding that there are small things can lead to even bigger change. And so I think that's really incredibly insightful and right on theme for the evening. Della, I wanted to bring you into the conversation. You as president of the Saugeen Rail Trail, I was doing some digging on your profile online, and I know that you're a big proponent of active transportation models. So considering biking and walking, and with your role with the rail trail, I think it's a really interesting model to look at. Again, as a commuter, I've now switched to walking to work, which is great, and I know it's a luxury that most in the region don't have. But with resources like a community trail and whatnot, I just wanted to see if you had any insights on that, and also just any insights from going through the carbon calculator yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Great event, as everyone has said. I'll start with your last comment. I was quite shocked by my score. It's only two of us in my house. But when I dug deeper, similar to what most folks have said, I was pleasantly surprised to see there are things we can do. And the biggest one was the airline one, because, like most Canadians, once or twice a year, I'd love to go somewhere. COVID has curtailed my travel. So I suspect if I did this in a normal year, it will be even worse. The other thing I'd like to mention also is that I've also been reading the comments as we've gone along. And I think I'd like to mention that while lots of people here have trucks, I don't, but I still have a big SUV, so I'm no better. But there was a good comment about the fact that even within houses, our own families, we can make changes. And I think we need to focus on some of that. Taking it back to the rail trail, if you look at what the town is doing, and then you look at what the county is doing, and then you look at what the province are doing as far as the transportation system, active transportation is a means of communication. So to give you an irony, when I lived in Toronto before I came here, what I would do is to find a good trail, I'd put my bike in my car, then I'll drive off somewhere, then I'll cycle, put it back in the truck, and drive back to my condo. And, it was nice to get the exercise, but God knows how much carbon I used to do that. And so active transportation in this area is really allowing people who not simply travel, use sort of cars for traveling, but if you got leisure activities, people snowmobile, people walk, people cycle. And so the idea is to make it easier for people who sort of take advantage of our community to be able to do that. And active transportation is one way you do it with a lower carbon footprint. I also noticed in the chat, someone talked about planting trees, and the rail trail has planted a lot of trees in the past, and we're looking to get funding to plant lots of trees. And I moved recently, Odette is my neighbor. And one of the things I loved about my neighborhood was that there are a few more trees here. Unfortunately, following the events of September, I realized I have more neighbors than I thought. So I'm going to try and plant more trees in my own house as well. But what I would like to say is that just based on all the different things happening in this community and the fact that we live in a great community where you can really be active without a major carbon footprint, one of the things I would love to do myself is take more Canadian and local vacations. Because if you think about it, lots of people from out of town will pay a lot of money to come live in our community so they can walk by the lake, and then we jump on the plane and go somewhere to do the same thing. So in a nutshell, different things rolling around, but this is a really good forum. I just hope we keep it up and it's not a one-off. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks very much, Ellen. I know we're getting close on time, and I still have two more panelists to bring to the conversation. So Taylor, I'm gonna jump to you, and I know you have a young family at home. And I'm wondering what the carbon calculator revealed for you as with a young family at home, and any practical changes that you could see or you could foresee in your life going forward here.
Well, just by chance, like I have a toddler who's in diapers still, so my garbage, like the waste thing, is like above average for sure. I did try my hand at the reusable diapers and it was a no-go. So that's something that I know some people can take advantage of and are brave enough to tackle. So yeah, for waste, that's one area that I think we can definitely make improvements on. Definitely when the youngest is out of diapers. But also trying to encourage my family members to make other choices, like at the grocery store, for example, and reduce packaging coming into the home. And we do try to recycle as much as possible, and encouraging them to use like our reusable grocery bags and stuff like that. So I do notice a lot of things, for example, now that school is back in, and buying all the stuff for lunches, there's just so much packaged stuff. So that kind of goes hand in hand with making more food, like healthier foods, rather than buying the processed stuff that comes in packaging. So I notice as I'm getting snacks or food for the kids, if it's crinkly, if it's like, if I have to open something to feed them, that's sort of like an audio reminder that I can be doing stuff differently in terms of their health and waste generation from just food, like food consumption. So we do compost, so that side of the food aspect is okay. It's just the packaging side of it is I think generating a large volume of waste.
Absolutely, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing. And last but certainly not least, Bill, just wanted to see what you've learned this evening, and different things, changes that you can make in your life based on the carbon calculator process this evening.
Thanks very much, Chad. I have a suspicion Cheryl asked me to participate because she knew that my carbon footprint is quite large. And when I did the calculator, indeed that was borne out. It was indeed quite large, and really driven a lot by air travel and transportation with cars. We don't own a truck, but we do have 2 cars. And for us, I think there's some hope. There's things we can do long term. We were not candidates for electric vehicles because we were doing a 900+ mile commute between a house in southern states and here. Well, we sold the house down there and are living here. So I would think that as we look at future, when it comes time to buying a new car, we'd look at an electric car, and hopefully the range will be increased. Another choice we've made is that for our air transport, which is at our age quite important to us, our children live all across the continent, that we can buy carbon offsets. I know there's some discussion of them maybe not being all that effective, but it is a step. We do try to compost. We compost in the summer, certainly. The winter, we're not doing it, and I just don't think it's very effective. And that's one area where I would look for help from the town if that was possible. I would add that representing the Southampton Residents Association, we've had an environmental priority for a number of years. We really want to be serious about protecting the environment. And one of the specific ways we're looking at that is to protect the tree canopy. So I'm very much encouraged by the work that the committee has been doing in the area of trying to strengthen tree protection within Saugeen Shores, because I think that both individual action and municipal action can make a huge difference to Canada's carbon footprint. Thanks very much for the opportunity. It's been great.
That's great, and that is a perfect way to end it. And I was told to wrap up the panel discussion at 7:58, so I'm right on time. So ending on a high note and right on time is perfect. So Neil, with that, I will kick things back to you. Just a final note of thanks to all of our panelists for participating and sharing their insights with us this evening. Thank you very much. It's very much appreciated.
Thanks, Chad. And again, a special thank you to our guest panelists for sharing your thoughts. We also want to thank Anna Gordon and Project Neutral, as well as speakers and our tech support. Thank you everyone for tuning in and participating tonight. We hope that you are able to use the calculator and that you will make your own plan to start making a difference, one person at a time. If you would like to leave further comments or questions, please email Cheryl Grace. And on that slide, you can see her email address. We also hope you'll take time to read the ESAC report, which comes out on February the 10th and will be presented to Council on February the 14th. If you would like to view tonight's video again, it will be on the town's website, and you can invite others to use the carbon calculator too. So thank you and good night.